All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Tim and Tim Show every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time with my one and only favorite co-host, Tim Vest. This week, we're talking about leverage and debt. I know it's an interesting conversation. It's ever evolving. When I was thinking about some show topics this morning, I was like, man, I don't really feel like talking about debt. It feels like we talk about debt all the time, but I have to. I have to remind myself that the bank is your number one and largest investor if you use one. And how you use leverage can either make or break a deal. It can break you as an investor and a borrower, or it can project your returns astronomically. And Tim and I have some examples that we can talk about how debt has worked for us and how debt has worked against us. And we're just going to provide a little bit of insight and transparency into the operations of what it looks like for us and some lessons that we've learned. What do you think about that, Tim?
Works for me, because boy, you can learn a lot of lessons with debt, can't you?
I wish at one point there was like this precipice of I don't need to learn anything else about debt, but it just keeps on coming, baby. It's just a little conveyor belt, little nuggets, and it just doesn't stop.
Well, and it's kind of crazy, right? Like as you figure out the different types of debt and you start to learn about other types of debt, which you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And
I know. Yeah,
you,
Dennis said, well, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't really understand how good the terms were. But he was talking about like the USDA rural loans and like what
yeah,
qualifies, what doesn't, and like the terms you can get. I was like, oh, I didn't even consider that.
yeah. But that's a good point because when you learn about that one, the other thing you got to learn is it takes a long time.
Yeah. Like a loan assumption.
Hey, but zing. Inside joke, folks. But you know what's funny? Yeah, it's funny you say that because I wasn't even thinking that, but I was getting ready to say everything's taking a long time now. I'm wondering has USDA, that USDA world stuff is it really taking any longer than anything else right now? Because I've heard guys talk about, oh, it could take 5 to 6 months. Well, hell, we're 6 months into a loan assumption. We're 4.5 months into just a typical
A
agency.
right.
Yeah, on a refi.
SBL refi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
all right.
I don't know, man.
I wish I could tell you because if I knew, we wouldn't be in this situation.
So what does leverage actually do to your returns, Tim?
Well, what leverage can make your returns go up astronomically, right? I think it's an interesting metric that people like to talk about is unlevered versus levered returns. And recently, I got reminded that people actually do look at deals on an unlevered basis. We were talking about the construction deal, right, with the development company, and I texted Tim and I was like, "Did you see his equity multiple? That's trash. Why would you do that?" And he goes, "Oh, Tim, they typically discuss in unlevered returns." And I was like, "I didn't know that. And that's interesting."
Right. Yeah.
But what can leverage do for your returns? If you got to think about, if you only have to bring, 25, 30% of the money that you would need to do 100% of a project, you by definition are getting, 2 to 3x leverage returns on that money, right? If you put $1 in and you get $3 out, right? There's 33, what's that? I can't math. 75% leverage, right?
Right.
If you need $4, you put one in and you get 3 from the bank, that's a lot of leverage, right? And that's a standard real estate loan. And what that does is it makes your returns go up a lot because the amount of equity that you have to bring to the table is reduced. So as your equity multiple goes up, there's some other things that also have to take into consideration is your cash flow. Because if you go in and you underwrite a deal on an unlevered basis, there's no interest to pay. But if you are underwriting a deal with interest, you have to consider your DSCR, your debt service coverage ratio. You have to consider what is the equity multiple as a ratio to the money that you have to bring. Because when you take on debt, you take on interest, right? The bank is taking on risk and they're going to get paid for that risk. And you are also reducing your risk and also paying the bank for a share in that risk, right? They're taking on what you can consider the vast majority of the risk by lending 65 to 75% leverage on a deal, and they're taking on 65 to 75% of the risk. Now,
Yeah.
how it's structured with title stuff and, first lien, second lien positions, et cetera, and so forth, that is a conversation for another time. But in simple mathematics, you can kind of see how the risk is shifted from 100% on you as the borrower to 25% on you and 75% on the bank. So you can understand why underwriting assumptions and loan processes can take a while, because the bank wants to ensure if they're taking on 75% of the risk that they're, one, protected, and two, that if things do go belly up, they'll be able to get their money back at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and, which always brings up a good point too, because, this is going to kind of lead into another kind of question here, which is, we've had some folks, including ourselves, from time to time be like, hey, with a deal where there's a piece of seller financing and the bank's like, we don't like other debt other than us, right? Like no more debt. If you're taking anything else in debt, then we're out. And a couple of times we've been like, why do you give a shit, right? I mean, you're in first position, you get paid first. It's that risk profile that you're talking about, right? It's like, yeah, I'm in first position, I get paid first, but if you over lever yourself on the backside, then you've increased the risk that you're not able to service and that this does get turned in, right? So,
Right.
it's like that balancing act of why does a bank care? Well, this is why they care, and you got to recognize that, right? Because you see guys all the time. I mean, I there's a deal I know about right now that has bank debt on it and seller financing debt, but unfortunately the operator took way too much seller or partnership equity on it, and it's eating up all the cash flow, right? So you gotta keep those kind of things in mind. So Tim, I think sometimes people don't understand when they are getting over leveraged, right? I mean, would you
Yep.
agree with that?
Oh,
Yeah.
I absolutely would agree with that. Right. Well, here's something to consider.
Sure.
You could be 100% leveraged and not be over leveraged,
Okay.
depending on the rate.
Right.
Right. And I think
Right.
that's what people don't pay attention to enough is they
Right.
look at the leverage as a percentage of total, but they don't really pay enough attention to the cash flow and the rate, because you could be 100% financed at 0% interest. Is that over leveraged?
Yep.
No, not at all. It's the best leverage you can ever get. It's amazing. Is it plausible? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, that's an extreme example of when you can't be over leveraged, even if you take 100% of
Yeah.
the proceeds.
Yeah.
Right.
For
Go ahead.
extreme example, right? Extreme example is, let's say you pay $1 million for a property, but for some reason you're in one of these markets where cash flow is crazy, but appreciation's not quite, right? So you
Yeah.
take the full million in terms of debt, but this thing's spitting off, $2,500 a month, or $20,000 a month in cash flow, right? I mean, it's extreme example, and guys, it's not a real one. So, that's an example, right, where you're over leveraged, right, technically, because you're 100% financed, but at the end of the day, it's cash flowing very, very, very nicely.
Now, what I thought about as you were talking, though, is the other thing that could come bite you in the ass is your time horizon.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe there's an argument. There's definitely an argument there that if you don't have enough time and the property
Right.
value doesn't go out, I mean, if you can't sell the property for what you owe it, then you are over leveraged, right?
Yeah, what, Tim, a good example of that is, go back to like 2006 and 7, when people were taking these 3-to-1 arms, right?
Yeah.
And they were taking a 3-to-1 arm because that's how they could afford the $1 million property, right?
Yeah.
Well, to your point, they could afford it for those 3 years, but in year 4, when it reset, right? All of a sudden their interest rate went from 4% to 6%. Their time horizon ran out, and all of a sudden the new rate doesn't work for them. So now they're over levered, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
and
I guess I take it back, about even if you take 100% leverage, you might not be over levered, but it depends on your time horizon and your rate, right? I mean, if
yeah,
you have an
yeah,
infinite amount of time period, then yeah, of course, you're never going to be over leveraged. But if you have a 2-year time period and you can't sell the property for $1 million, net proceeds $1 million to pay off the bank, then yeah, you're over leveraged.
yeah, for sure.
Now, you as an investor can say that my risk profile is good enough, is high enough where I'm going to take that bet, and if I can't sell it for what I owe it, I just plan on putting a little bit of money into the deal to make sure that I can pay off the debt. That's an
Right,
entirely different scenario and situation.
right.
Or you could say, well, I'm going to take 100% of the cash flow and pay down the principal every month, so that when
Yeah,
I do get to an sale event, I've built up that equity in the deal because I've paid down the leverage.
yeah, yeah. Those are really good points, man. But guys, what this really kind of calls out is like it all depends. I mean, we talk
It
about
all
this all the time.
depends. Yeah.
It all depends.
And let's talk about good debt versus bad debt, right?
Right.
I think I would quickly define bad debt in today's market as a loan that doesn't have enough runway for you to achieve your business plan. That's
Yeah,
bad debt.
sure.
In real estate, right? I mean, obviously, if you're thinking the old Dave Ramsey, then you take a car loan out, that's bad debt as well. But
Right.
for what we're talking about is the real estate. So I would say if you're taking out a short-term loan and you don't have a crystal clear path of execution to be able to get out of that loan in that time period, that's bad debt.
Yeah, because to use another really good example that people will understand, right? Hard money, right?
Yeah, hard money.
Sometimes people will be like, "Man, hard money loans are just bad." No, not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. If you have a business plan and you know you can execute, right? 20% hard money loan over a short period of time that you know for a fact that you can execute. Those are okay. I know guys doing stuff in that realm that have their business model just down to a T, and they're doing just fine, right?
Yeah.
Where guys get in trouble with that is just, I'm going to use an example that I know of is that novice flipper that runs into a flip with tight margins and they have no other access to loans, so they take that 20% hard money loan and they just can't execute because they've never done it before. And
Yeah.
that's a bad product for that situation. There are times when that product is good for other situations, right? It all depends.
It all depends. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think is good debt in today's market then? We clearly
Uh,
identified bad debt, right? What's good debt?
anything with a 3+ year time horizon on it. Well, not anything, but debt with a 3+ year time horizon is where I would start.
I would say that's
I
the bare minimum.
Yeah, that's where I would start, and then ideally anything with a 6% or lower interest rate. Ideally, that's where you start, right? And then
Yeah.
it depends on the deal. Depends on the deal. Depends on your experience. Depends on your time horizon. Um, I bridge products I'm really leery of right now. I think it works in certain situations, depending on what your business plan is and what you have inked on the backside. But that's where I would start. What do you think?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think as a minimum, I don't disagree with you. I think that's where my brain defaulted to was like, 5-year terms, right off the rip.
Mhm.
But that's covered by your 3+ year minimum, right? And
Yeah,
I would say not. It's better, in my opinion, right now, with some of the difficulties that we've had with banks. I think it's better to take lower leverage from a bank and raise more investor capital so that you have the money in the
yeah,
bank to pay for capex and to do the things that you need to do, because that was kind of our Achilles heel on some stuff, was not being able to. I mean, it still is on one deal specifically, is we can't get access to the money fast enough to be,
right.
like the crew's got to work for 2-3 weeks, then they stop for 2 weeks, then they work for 2-3 weeks, then they stop for 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, we just burned a month of them sitting around over a quarter, right? So they work for 2 months out of the quarter, and they're not doing anything for a month out of the quarter because of the processing time and the inspection time and the level of detail that has to go in. It's like, But if you just have the money there and you know how to operate it with, getting the construction crews there to do what you need to do,
Yeah.
that reduces your risk significantly, right? Not
Yeah.
only is your debt service lower, right, to the bank, right, your first lien position is lower, but then you have access to the money immediately in your own
Right.
bank account to be able to deploy.
Yeah. So guys, and Tim, stop me if I'm going too far into this, but guys, kind of what he's talking about. And this was a good lesson learned for us. So with that I know what he's talking about. That was a lender that we had never worked with before,
Mhm.
and we had raised the money for that capex that Tim's talking about, but the lender requires us to put it with them and go through the typical bank draw process to access our money, right?
Mhm.
And what we did not realize, because we had not worked with this lender before, was how long their draw process could be. Um, so what he's talking about is, we get guys on the property, we know we have the budget, they're working, they're working, they're working. They get that, they send us that first bill. And sometimes with these crews, it's like you get maybe 2 weeks, maybe 30 days, but sometimes that bank draw process is 30 days plus. And all
Mhm.
of a sudden the crews are like, I'm not doing anything else till I get paid. Right.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you send in a draw on a Tuesday, they review it by the end of the day Thursday. Maybe they get an inspector to you by the end of the following week or the middle of the week after that. There's 3 weeks right there.
yeah.
Then they got to come back. They got to approve it. Then they got to set up a wire payment or an ACH that could take 5 to 7 business days. I mean,
Yeah.
it very easily can snowball to a 40-day draw process.
Yeah. So this starts to kind of talk about like the experience, like we talked about with that hard money loan, right? As you have experience, you can start to understand what your hard money lenders look like, because Tim and I had a conversation with a group last week that's clearly a lender that came out of the construction world,
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
wow. That was
And
way different. But
yeah, and on their call, they were like, "This is our process. This is how we work, et cetera, et cetera. After the first draw, and we see your process, we can maybe get down to just doing it this way." But even their extended process is like a week, right?
Mhm.
And but you start to realize, okay, that's a lender that understands construction and understands that the biggest risk to construction is delays, right?
Yeah.
As that is one of the maybe the single largest problem with construction is if you get delayed.
Well,
Um,
delays cover so much. I mean, you can have material delays,
right,
labor delays, money
right,
delays, um, financial delays. Like, I mean, and
right,
that's a pretty big umbrella, right? But yeah,
right.
absolutely. I would say delays is the biggest cause
But
for missing your timelines.
But you talk about material waste, like that lender, right? That lender said, "We will fund material up front,"
Mhm.
where we've gone to lenders
And they
before
won't
and
say
we've said,
no.
and they've said no. Like guys during COVID, right around COVID, when so many supply chain disruptions were going on, we're literally going to our lenders going, "We need to get this material on site. We can't be ordering just in time. It doesn't work." And lenders are like, "We're not comfortable with that. We're not
Yeah,
comfortable with that." It's like, you do realize the biggest risk to this project is material delays right now in this current environment. And they were like, "We don't care. We're not pre-funding anything."
right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
man, that lender that we're working with now would have been perfect for that Columbia deal.
100%. Oh yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
had,
yeah,
what, $2 million, $3 million
yeah,
outlay almost immediately from, roofs, parking lots, and material orders. I mean,
yeah,
millions of dollars up front, basically day one to order all that stuff and put deposits down.
yeah. Like Tim, you're talking about that. Like one of the nice things about our Hickory project is, hey, we drop containers on site and we
Mhm.
put material in the containers, guys, so that when the construction crews need flooring, they walk outside, there's flooring, right?
Mhm.
And it's there. I'm not going to say there haven't been delays and hiccups, but that's been very helpful. Is our ability to have that material sitting there on site, and for the most part, it's moved.
Yeah.
So you start to learn those things as you go, and again, I go back to the hard money example. That's where if I were an experienced flipper, a hard money loan would not bug me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'd drop a container in the driveway of the house, I'd have all my material sitting there, and my crews would know, right? So we'd get going.
Yeah, I've never flipped a house before. It's always like the allure of doing something that can generate, 50,000, $100,000 in profit in,
Yeah,
you know, 4 to 6 months is nice, but like, my God, the operational stress and problems and dealing with people and man, that that's something, man. People make a ton of money flipping houses, like a ton of money, but they are incredibly organized and systematized in order to be effective with that.
Yeah, well, and they know going in, they know what their margins need to be. From day one, they're like, if it ain't this margin, I'm not even looking at it. Right?
Yeah, I'm not going to touch it. Yeah,
it's too skinny, too much. It's not going to work, right?
So let's talk about that. When you're coming across deals that are too skinny, and the banks are tightening down their leverage requirements and underwriting processes and all those types of things. How do you like to use creative financing in order to make deals work, right? Because as buyers and sellers, we're doing a lot of it, right? So where's your mindset at right now with how you're looking at creative financing on the buy and the sell side?
Yeah. So, on the sell side, what I would say is that I'm willing to get as creative as is mutually beneficial, right? And also legal.
And legal.
Let's keep it, yeah, legal first and then mutually beneficial. Let's do it in that order. So if I have equity to share and it gets the deal done and I'm able to get some of my equity and share some of it as well, as long as that equity is earning in some way, I'm open to a discussion. Does that help?
Oh, absolutely. I get it.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that I've done for us is doing that, next buyer analysis, right? And saying, hey, if I was going to buy this,
right.
So the biggest thing, like when negotiating with sellers, I'm trying to get creative financing, is you don't know what they're going to offer or what they're willing to accept. If you're the one that does the underwriting and you know what the deal is going to look like, you know what you can provide, you know what you can ask for, you know what you can say, what the property will service in debt coverage and all this other kind of stuff, right? Because you're kind of seeing the numbers. It really makes the conversations a whole lot easier because I know what's going to benefit them. And if they try to argue with me, it has to be a reasonable argument. And I'm not saying that I'm not willing to budge or move or hear it out. But at the end of the day, I've probably made it worth your while and my while in order to just creatively structure a deal like this. And even, Tim Bratz's event in Asheville a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about creative financing and seller financing and all that kind of stuff. And, they were just talking about sellers structuring deals. The cheapest debt that you can possibly get is from the seller every single time, right? Because sellers, I've gotten seller financing at 3.5% interest before, right? And some sellers are willing to take 3, 4, 5, 6% interest. And if you're getting bank debt of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then you're going to try to take as much leverage from that seller that you can because you're reducing your total cost of capital at the end of the day.
Right. Well, and I think, and Tim, I think a lot of people miss the whole points, right? The whole points conversation when they're looking at debt. Like they'll look at, let's just say that the bank's offering 5%, but the seller's offering 6%. But the bank's also the broker's charging 1%, the bank's charging 1%, and then on the back end, sometimes the bank's got exit fees and stuff like that. It's like, hey, boy, by the time you look at it, guys, your effective rate with that lender is really 7.5%.
Right.
And you got 6% with the seller, and by the way, your closing costs are probably going to be lower too because you don't have as much, there's just not as much legal going on.
Less middle people, less legal. Yeah.
Right.
And you know what's actually funny? I've never offered a seller in an offer of a point, like, hey, like if you come in a seller note, I'll give you 1 point up front as kind of your lender originally.
Because it's fine, but I always look at points as lost equity, right? Like
it is.
As soon as I pay that money to somebody, I've lost that equity. I got to make that money back in appreciation in order to get back to even, right?
Yep.
So I always look at points as lost equity. So I don't tend to offer it up unless the seller comes back and asks for it.
Oh, right? Of course not. Like, why would I pay you more money? But you can use it as a token, as a chip, right? As a bargaining chip. Like, well, hey, sorry, I can't pay you the 5% interest over the life of the, I can't pay you 6% interest over the life of the loan, but how about I give you 1 point origination fee, which is effectively 6% your first year.
Yeah. There's 100%, man. There's absolutely places where it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, and in some ways, I think your example is really good. In some ways, it actually can give you a little bit of like comfort, right? Like, hey, listen, I know I have I know I got 10 grand in the bank today, and I'm not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt me to go ahead and pay that to you. But
Hmm.
what? So I'm going to give you 10 grand up front, but affectionately, not affection, effectively,
Affectionately.
yeah, we're affectionate here. Effectively, effectively reduce my monthly payment, right? So if I can pay the point but get a lower
Yeah.
rate as a result, then
Yeah.
maybe I do it because I do like that. I tell people all the time, like I'd rather pay for people beat me up on this. I would rather pay for something up front than take on the monthly payment.
I too. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
because it's funny, even when I assess my own personal financial situation, I know what expenses I have coming up. And I'm like, okay, I need to have X
yeah,
amount of dollars to pay my boat slip for next year. I'm like, okay, just
right,
pay it. Like, I'm not going to pay that over installments because
right,
that stress of that looming money having to be there all the time is
right,
so stressful. Like, oh,
right. Yeah,
I just want it
and
paid
and
for. It.
and then too, like we talked about, it's runway time horizon. Like
Time horizon. Yeah.
let's say you get 5%, and the seller's giving you 5 years, right? Or he'll give you 4%, but you got to pay a point up front over the
I'll
same
take
time
4%
horizon.
and a point all day.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
because
because I mean, also what you're doing is you're adjusting your risk profile, right? I mean,
well, you're adjusting your risk profile, and now you're paying 4% over 5 instead of 5% over 5, right? So
yeah, of course. I
that
mean,
one point, that 1 point's effectively just year one, right?
right. And
So
you can calculate what that number is, right? I mean, you can
right,
calculate how much money and interest you're saving, right?
right,
And hey, maybe, I mean, you can structure it however the hell you want. You could do a point up front, a point on the back end, and say, hey, like you're still going to get all of this money. It's going to look a little bit different, but I can't afford to pay you on a monthly basis because the debt coverage is not there based on the
right,
property operations.
right, right.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, going back to the original question, like I mean, and this is the perfect market to get creative with that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
totally.
Um, that's the way a lot of deals are getting done, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, a lot of done. I mean, creative financing is. I mean, it's a win-win scenario, right? I mean, and when you can find win-win scenarios, that's when you're going to have the most amount of success, right? Because you win, I win, and it's not real. What do they say? It's like when you're negotiating, nobody leaves happy,
right.
right? It's like no, no, no. Like you want to leave. Both people want to leave happy. Like I want to be happy that hey, I'm getting a great deal. I'm going to make a lot of money. The leverage looks good. My
Yeah,
risk profile is low, and the seller's like, great. I'm going to close on this deal. I maybe am going to make more money than I thought I was going to because I hadn't considered this
yeah,
option. It worked for him, works for me. Let's do this, right? And it's like that's that symbiotic relationship that
yeah,
feels good when you do deals. And then when that happens, the guarantee for more deals is definitely there.
yeah. And one other thing I would say too about seller financing in this market, I was like, if you're a cash buyer or you can secure some level of seller financing, you're increasing deal certainty, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the market where lenders will drag you down a road for 60, 90, 120 days and then turn around and be like, we no longer
Eh,
like the deal, we're not doing it.
yeah.
And
Been there.
and yeah, and that is, guys, that is a true risk. So you can go to the seller and say, hey, listen, if you want to get this deal done, this gets it done.
Yeah.
you know
Immediate. And here's my time. Whenever we make seller financing offers, especially if they go into the first position, I can close in 2 weeks.
yeah,
As fast as we can complete due diligence to make sure that there's no gremlins hiding that we didn't know, and
right,
and the attorneys can finalize the title work, you can close. I mean, it's that easy. There's no banks, there's no appraisals, you don't need all these additional surveys and stuff. Is it recommended? Absolutely, but it's not a condition or requirement of closing, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, that could be super attractive. You might even be able to get a better deal at a lower price with lower interest because you close quickly.
Or depending on what the seller's motivation is, you could probably go to them and go, hey, listen, I need 2 weeks. So here's my offer. This offer with seller financing, minimum 2 weeks close. After that, it's up to you. You close when
Yeah,
you're ready, right?
right.
Um,
Mm.
because you think about that, like some of these guys may be like, I don't want to close till after December 31st, or I may especially for you guys doing like houses, right? Like maybe there's an opportunity there to say, hey, listen, let's go ahead and get this thing under contract. We'll do this, and you move whenever it's convenient for you, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Because
that's definitely appetizing.
yeah, so
So,
Anyway.
all right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed the conversation today. Appreciate you joining, and we will see you again next week.
See you guys.